In this episode, we talk about the BlackRock refiling for the Bitcoin spot ETF. What did Larry Fink just say about Bitcoin? Is Kraken in trouble with the IRS? And guess what? A couple of bridges are hacked. We're going to talk about that and answer community questions coming up. Advantis Outlook is an all-in-one suite of tools for the DeFi market. As we know, the token space is the wild west of crypto, with hundreds, if not thousands, of rug pulls every single day. Advantis Outlook, powered by AI, gives you a place to trade on the Ethereum and the Binance Smart Chain. Not only will Advantis Outlook help you do your own research and give you your own personal score for any project that you're looking at, but it will also keep you safe with a one-of-a-kind AI rug pull prediction model. If Advantis AI predicts a rug pull, trading for that token is turned off on the platform, so you can't accidentally buy. This incredible tool is free to use. Visit www.advantis.ai to start using this incredible prediction model and keep yourself safe today.
You are listening to the Everything Crypto podcast with your host, Justin, known as Just Moonshot. This show is not financial advice and is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and if you are watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you get notified when the next episode goes live. Now on with the show.
In our first story, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF application has been refiled, naming Coinbase as the surveillance partner. This is exactly what the SEC was talking about when saying that the applications were inadequate from both parties, whether it was BlackRock or the one that's backed by Fidelity. Neither of them actually stated who their surveillance partner would be. Now, in both cases, both groups chose Coinbase for the surveillance partner, and this means that the spot coin ETFs are back on the table and awaiting approval from the SEC. As I said last week, things like this do happen. It's not a big deal. They're able to refile, and they'll keep refining that until the SEC is happy, and then the SEC will finally make a decision. One thing to remember with the history of Bitcoin ETFs, it's taken a very long time for the SEC to ever approve one. It goes through a very long process of consideration and then approval, and up till today, not a single one has been approved. So we're hoping, I think the BlackRock has something going here. Fidelity probably does as well, but let's hope that we see a spot ETF for Bitcoin. This would be a big thing for the markets and it would really help out with mass adoption of crypto as it starts being looked at as an asset by large institutions and big money players. This is only good for crypto, and we will see where it goes from here. In story 2, we're sticking to BlackRock. BlackRock CEO and chairman Larry Fink has said that Bitcoin is an international asset. And this is huge. He's talking about why they've chosen to create a spot ETF. This is really, really interesting. There was an interview on Fox, and he came out and he just straight up said it, saying that he sees Bitcoin is digitizing gold, and it may be used as a hedge against economic instability as well as turmoil in countries when that happens. He even called Bitcoin an international asset because it's not backed by any $1. When you have big institutions and CEOs from these companies coming out and saying that Bitcoin is an asset, it's something that can be used as a hedge, that is really good news once again for mass adoption. This is where we're going to see probably the largest adoption of Bitcoin in history in this next bull run because of things like this. In the next story, Kraken is ordered by the Fed to turn over all tax records to the IRS from the years of 2016 to 2021. The IRS will be getting information from users who transacted more than $20,000 over a calendar year during these periods, including usernames, any pseudonyms, birthdays, taxpayer identification numbers, address, phone numbers, email addresses, and anything else that Kraken has on file for them. It looks like the IRS is trying to crack down and make sure people are paying their crypto taxes. And for some Kraken customers between 2016 and 2021, if you did not file your taxes, the IRS is going to be coming. They're going to be knocking on the door and asking why it was not filed. Now, Kraken had said that they were going to fight the IRS on this because they felt that the amount of information the IRS was requesting was an overreach of information. This comes down to the fact that, you know, they're looking for pseudonyms, phone numbers, email addresses, everything like that. So they felt it was an overreach. However, the courts have gone ahead and sided with the IRS, and that will take place shortly. That information will be given to the IRS, and the IRS will start their investigations. And of course, what would any news week be without bridge attacks or some kind of bridge hack? We actually have two this week. We talked about the first one in our YouTube shorts. The Poly Network bridge got hacked, with hackers able to mint over $4 billion worth of tokens, which is insane. However, some of these tokens like BUSD and BNB had no liquidity, so the attackers weren't able to sell them. However, in other cases, they did find liquidity. They were able to sell Shiba Inu, for example. It looks like that was pretty much the largest amount, which was about 350 ETH worth. But once again, incredible that these bridge hacks keep happening, and we keep seeing these issues with bridges. And of course, we're not done there. Multi-Chain's bridge has also been attacked. They are recommending right now that if you've ever used the Multi-Chain bridge or services, that you revoke any access to any of the contracts that are in your wallet right now. Definitely make sure you're checking that out. They obviously don't feel comfortable with something there. You know, maybe they've lost control of the contract, something like that. So just remember, if you've used Multi-Chain at all, go and revoke your access in your wallet and make sure that you're staying safe. Around $130 million has been stolen in this exploit. Did see a lot of it was wrapped BTC, but this once again is proving that bridges need more work and they are not to be trusted and they are not secure. So if you're looking to bridge from one blockchain to another, always revoke your access to that bridge after the fact, just in case something like this happens. This has been happening again and again and again, and we keep seeing it, and it looks like there has not been a solution yet to these bridge attacks. We have seen Matic have a bridge attack, Poly Network. We've seen Ethereum's bridge actually got hacked at one point. So things are just not quite there with bridges. So we got to make sure that if we're using bridges, we're being completely safe. And the safest way, of course, is to revoke any access once you're done using that bridge. And now a word from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Advantis University. Are you new to cryptocurrencies or have friends asking how to get started? Advantis AI has provided a free Crypto 101 course for you and your friends and family. Learn from the Advantis team with over 20 years of combined crypto experience, breaking down the basics of what is an exchange, what is a wallet, and how to navigate the crypto market. Enroll free at www.advantis.ai and start learning today. So this week we have a question from the community, which is excellent. This question comes from Haywire. He asks, with the new centralized exchange setup for institutions to trade coins, is DeFi crypto and other tokens at risk? And is this new exchange that we spoke about in the last episode the beginning of the CBDC in the Western world? So first things first, great question. Absolutely love it. Is DeFi crypto tokens at risk? For the most part, not really. The reason why is it's going to be very, very, very hard for governments to actually regulate and actually get their hands on DeFi crypto if we're talking about tokenized projects. And that's because the sources come from a bunch of different places. So even with something like Uniswap, where, yeah, you may be trading on a decentralized exchange, the actual liquidity is provided by multiple groups. So the government really doesn't have a good, clean way to get in and kind of get their mitts on it, if that makes sense. So for as far as it goes, does this really mean anything for the DeFi crypto space? Not really. We are going to see some regulation. Obviously, we see it in the EU, and we're probably going to see some in the United States soon. We're going to see some in Canada. The government's been making noise there. But within those regulations, there will always be people who dodge the regulations, and there will always be offshore projects where, you know, maybe the regulations aren't there or there's very little regulation. The biggest challenge that will create for those projects, though, is that they won't be able to get listed on exchanges, most likely. But as far as it goes, people will always trade on an open market, even if they have to go through DeFi to do it. We saw that a lot last year with the bull run. A lot of people were trying to get into a more complicated way of trading, like using Uniswap and trading ETH for things and BNB for things. And people were willing to go to that effort to do it, and that was completely decentralized. There is no record other than the blockchain of who did what and what that was bought. You know, as public as the ledger is, it's still private because you don't know unless you give somebody your wallet address. Nobody knows who owns that wallet. Yes, all the transactions are trackable, and yes, we can all see those transactions, but we don't necessarily know who owns that wallet. So it's a very decentralized place. So there's no real risk with governments coming in and stomping out DeFi. It'd be very difficult for them to do so. And if they did, they would just drive it underground and people would still use it. So no real risk there. And as far as this exchange, is this the kind of introduction of CBDCs into the Western world? I don't believe so. I think the only route that would benefit CBDCs is if the CBDC came out and you had to buy the CBDC to use it on that exchange. But I think it's probably going to be regular fiat for these companies. I think with this exchange is what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of credit pools open for them with these exchanges. I think it's going to be more like the stock trading world, where a lot of stuff is just bought on credit and there's, money printed every day for those guys. So I believe that we're going to see probably fiat. If CBDCs go through, I don't know if it would affect the popularity of CBDCs if they forced it, because in the States, what they were talking about was creating 2 CBDCs, one for business and institutions and one for, your average citizen. And they'd be monitored in different ways. And I know that sounds terrifying, and believe me, I believe it is. I think it's absolutely terrifying. But they would be using the institution-based CBDC. So I don't see this as being the beginning of the CBDCs in the Western world. I think it's going to start with the people first and then move to business a second. I think that's probably the easier way to do it. But as far as it goes, I don't see this exchange as being a part of that in any significant or big way. I think in reality, what the governments will probably do is they will make the issuers of the CBDC the banks, because the banks, when they're CBDCs, if everything goes CBDCs, you don't need the banks anymore. Everything's online. So, Bank of America doesn't need to exist. A lot of these banks don't need to exist anymore. And a lot of these banks hold a lot of power. So how do you keep them appeased in a situation like this? And that's to make them the issuer. So if they're handling the transactions and they're the ones who are verifying the transactions and they're the ones who are issuing funds, then they still have their place as a bank. And I think that's really what's probably going to happen, is you're going to see that the banks are going to be the bigger part of this. Now, does that mean some banks will die? Absolutely. I think a lot of the smaller kind of local banks will be closing. I think that credit unions will probably have a hard time going forward, but it's going to be a long process. You can't just overnight change everybody from cash to CBDCs. I just don't see that happening. It's going to be kind of a long process. It's going to be, you could get your paycheck in this, or you can get it in this, and then it'll show up. So we're a long road ahead before CBDCs. I mean, they're not even approved yet. Their final versions haven't been filed yet. We have to see where they go. The ones I have seen are more than mildly disturbing, the controls that the governments want to take over it. Things like, if you're in an economic downturn as we are now and you're not spending money and you're putting it under the mattress, so to speak, they would be able to force you to actually spend that money. And it's such an overreach of power. And yes, people spending money does solve, to a certain level, issues with inflation and economic downturns, but to force people, I don't see that as a positive at all. I think that's very dangerous. And you know how the government is, you give them an inch, they take a mile. So if you give them the power to do it during an emergency time where the economy is trash, you know what's going to happen. They're never going to relinquish that control, and that just scares the hell out of me. So for me, I don't think this exchange has a lot to do with CBDCs, but I do fear what CBDCs have to offer. Thank you so much for the question, Haywire. I think that was a fantastic question. If you want to ask your own question and have it read on the air, make sure to go over to www.everythingcryptopodcast.com. And there is a question form in the links on the top of the page. Enter your question and I'll answer it on the show for you. So with my closing thoughts on the week, for the most part, it's been a kind of quiet week on crypto, which is kind of nice. Now, we did see a couple of bridge hacks, and we did see during our last episode, the SEC shutting down the spot ETFs. However, being insufficient filing wasn't a big deal, because companies like BlackRock, they're like bulldogs. They're going to come in and they're going to sink their teeth in. And if they get rejected, they're just going to go back, figure out why they got rejected, and go back and refile again. And they're just going to do that until they get approved. They got the time, the money, and the lawyers to pull it off. So with that, it seemed like it was a pretty minor clerical error for both companies. They didn't fill out who their security partner was going to be. They both chose Coinbase. I'm not sure if that's a shot at the SEC, with Coinbase being sued by the SEC right now. But obviously it shows that major institutions don't think that Coinbase is going anywhere. They think that they're a solid choice for a security partner. And both filings are back on the table. So We'll see what the SEC has to say. Hopefully we don't get any bad news today. However, things have been pretty good on the front of the SEC. They haven't been pushing too much. They've been a little bit quieter after opening their lawsuits against Binance and against Coinbase. So who knows what's going to happen next? It's a crazy world. That's why we're here. We're going to keep you up to date on the most pressing news in crypto. And we're here to answer your questions along the way. Also, since last week, we've had some major changes to the podcast. First things first, we've been approved on all major platforms for podcasting. This includes Apple, Google Podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere. So if you have a favorite platform, go check us out there. You can listen to us in the car, wherever you are. Also, when you do find us there, please, if you do enjoy the show, like and follow. That helps the algorithm to get us out to more people so they can keep up with the news and listen to what we're talking about. And once again, I would like to thank our sponsor for this podcast, Advantis AI. Make sure you check out their amazing suite of tools at www.advantis.ai. And that's it for this week. Good luck in your trades this week, and we'll see you next time. Bye.